Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Tafuma.
How are you guys?
Very well.
Very well, thank you.
Me, I'm not very well today. I'm told that the bond notes are finally going to be introduced. The RBZ is doing a campaign to explain to the people, which I think is a good thing, by the way. But the reason why I'm worried is 2008. Or maybe there's nothing to worry about, but maybe you guys can convince me that the bond notes are a good thing for the country. Who wants to start?
Let me start, gentlemen. I'll be honest with yourselves. I don't know much about the bonds and the impact that they will have, or be it the impact that they will not have. So far, my understanding is that these bonds have been there in terms of the coins and have been used, I think, as change. And my understanding, I think, is just expanding on that, putting notes instead. I'm not sure where the big issue is here compared to the US dollar. My understanding was that I think they're going to bring in about 200 million, which was equivalent. Then they produce equivalent of 200 million bonds. So for me, I think it's business as usual. But you need to enlighten me because, like I'm saying, I'm not very clear on why people are so worried.
Maisa?
Yeah, well, I think the way I understand it is that they're going to bring in $2 and I think $5 notes of the bond coins. I think the first batch is about 75 million. What my belief is that they're definitely they are going to work because we're using US dollars in the country that we could have used to import things out of the country. So because we don't have our own currency at the moment, it just makes sense that if we have a placeholder that has got value, which we could use for transactions in the country, it will just make everything better. Because what it is at the moment, as money was being externalized.
I don't think the bond notes will work. Not because they're a bad idea, not because they're not a good measure, but because of the power of perception. It is not down to who introduces them, it's down to who uses them. And from my experience with Zimbabweans and what I've been hearing on the ground, there's already an air of mistrust. And without being sure how things exactly are working to the last T, I know that, for example, right now dollars are selling for a premium. So anyone who's got notes can sell them for 5 to 10% more than the actual value of those notes. So you already have a situation where the value of money is does not reflect the value of the notes, and those are US dollars, which are seen as a trustworthy currency. So with bond notes and the perception that people have, there's just going to be a black market. Now I'm not sure how that black market will work, but I think that because of perception, people prefer to have actual US dollar notes or other currencies, and will start selling those bond notes for lesser value than they're actually worth in return for actual physical US dollar cash or whatever, pounds, rands, whatever.
But I think my understanding, I think, is if the bonds notes that are coming out have been made the equivalent of the US dollar. I think the community or the people of Zimbabwe need to understand that when they have a $5 or a 5 bond note, it is equivalent to a $5 note. So of course, people will create situations that will benefit them, and they will sell you the $5 note for 8 bond notes. But in reality, Manguja, if I understand him, has said these things are equal. So if you have a 5 bond note and a $5 note, you can buy or pay for the ticket with any one of them. They have the same value. That's my understanding. So, but of course, we have, unfortunately, what we call unscrupulous people that will take advantage of situations like that, and unfortunately, the fears that people have and people would prefer to buy the US dollar over the bond. But if people can only just relax and take the bond as a dollar note, then they're the same value. That's my understanding.
I'm surprised that the RBZ is even using such languages. They might be unscrupulous people. How can you use such language when you're trying to introduce something to say, oh, there might be some unscrupulous people?
And they are.
They're already preparing the market for them instead of just, saying
I think Simon is ready to come in, but, we'll have some questions for him.
Okay. Ask me questions. Because I think the whole the concept of a bond not succeeding or failing, people must understand that the biggest customer and the biggest supplier in the market is government. If government accepts that money, if parastatals accept that money is going to work. What you guys are saying, government, ZESA, GMB, Zimbabwe, ZINWA, all government institutions, schools, all these are government institutions. If they accept that money, that's a done deal. The black market can only work because the government wants it to work. It worked before because RBZ had been told by the IMF and the World Bank to buy forex from the black market. They were being informed. This had happened in America before, if you read American history, where you print money and buy real money. And now, the same people are the ones advising government to start a new currency. And they will support the bond like the way they've supported the coin. These things are not happening in isolation. If you realize, when the bond notes were announced, IMF had put a statement that they've worked with the Zimbabwean government. They've been working since the government of national unity. So these things are not happening in isolation. Even government recently paid money to the IMF, all the money they were taking, all the US dollars from the market to pay IMF. And that bank which is giving the Zimbabwean government money is a World Bank government, is a arm of the World Bank. So this bond notes, is government been getting a loan from the IMF because they paid the IMF. That bond was not going to start.
In principle, I agree with you, Simon, in terms of what everything you're saying is absolutely true. But let's remember, in 2008, there are notes were issued by ASM, by government, and everything else. It's not about who accepts them; it's the users.
Right. What happened?
I'll tell you why I think another reason why it won't work. We don't have internal production at the capacity that we're supposed to have that will supply the market. So we're still to import a lot of things. At the moment, there's still people who are importing things illegally. For example, I found out today that people are buying coke in Mozambique for almost half the price they're buying it. They're selling for in Zimbabwe. So people are going to Mozambique to buy Coca-Cola and importing into Zimbabwe and selling on the black market. So all those leakages, unfortunately, will chip into the supply of cash, US dollar cash, and dollars will become more expensive because as people have to import goods that are not available on the local market because they're not producing. So until we ramp up production, that's going to be an issue as well.
Let me give you an answer on that. Zimbabwe used to have a trade surplus from 1980 until 2000 and something. We always had a trade surplus before we even exported our labor, which is now we call the diaspora people. Let's imagine we have 1 million diasporans at the moment. Each one bringing in an average of $100 into the Zimbabwean economy. That's why the Zimbabwean economy has failed to suffer. It's got enough from US dollars. Which African countries managed to run the US dollar as the anchor currency? The only problem which has happened was the externalization got extreme. But the currency, the thing is, we have people who are working abroad, feeding their families, sending money. This is free currency going into Zimbabwe. Don't forget that. That's the key thing. We will send money every month, you and me, whether we like it or not. And if 3 million of us is sending an average of $100 a month, that money is coming into the coffers of the state. So it's a key. That's why we always have a surplus. The problem is we've reversed the surplus. We are using money to buy things in the street, buying sweets with the US dollars. The money should be in the banks, buying machinery, buying oil, buying things we need for the country.
The problem again we face there is that I was reading a report the other day that said that we spend approximately 90 to 95% of our income on our stomachs. So with a situation like that, you've got a problem. What you're saying about saving doesn't happen. And when you don't save...
It's exactly consumption. We are consumptive people because of a currency. People with a high currency have a high living standard. The currency forces you, like if you've got pounds, you feel, you look at it, you walk with a pound, you can go to anywhere and buy. That's the same thing with Zimbabwe. Zimbabweans were going to South Africa and they were like, wow, things are so cheap. So they became consumptive. So the new currency is to stop that kind of a trend. You want to go to South Africa now, they're going to say, what are you buying there? You're going to buy the US dollar at a premium, which will cost you when you go to South Africa. So these things will stop. That's the idea. When we have our own currency now, we're equal with Zambians. We're equal with Mozambicans. You can't just walk into Mozambique and buy what you want. That's the idea. This will take long, but this is the road government can only follow, which can get Zimbabwe into a different country altogether. At the moment, we are a province of America.
Simon,
I think
do you think a black market will develop?
The black market can only develop if government wants it to develop. That's the thing, you must understand that statement. Government is the biggest supplier and customer in the market. Understand that in economics. You don't understand that, you will not understand that the black market was caused by government. They're the ones buying the money on the black market. And the moment now they stop it, no one will buy, no one has got that capacity.
I might be wrong. I might be wrong, but I think I've got a hunch. I think there's more money in private hands than there is in government coffers at the moment, because people aren't putting money into. I believe. This is just me speculating. I believe there's more money in private hands because people aren't banking money. So money is swapping hands informally and not formally.
Yeah, to a point. But the government is getting... You see, you are not understanding the point. Every school, every council, everything is government. That's what you must understand. These institutions, put them together. No one is money more than government. That's why they can determine the rate in the black market. They wanted it to happen that way. Because they were buying money for cheap. They were printing money at night. Overnight, they got banks in the streets buying real US dollars. They wanted it to happen that way. They thought they could get away with it. But it came to a point where it hit a ceiling. So right now, they put the bond coins.
No, the government is, like I was just saying, the government is producing the bond coins. The bond coins are going to be used locally. I think what will fuel the black market is the fact that the fear that people have, which is unfounded, because like I'm saying, the governor has said the bond note that is being produced or that is being released is the equivalent of the US dollar. So there's no need for people to panic. The only thing that is that if you need the proper US dollar, then you take your five bond note to the bank and say, I'm going to South Africa for whatever reason, so I need a US dollar which can work in South Africa. Because my understanding, the bond can only work in Zimbabwe. But again, like someone is saying, when you are taking the US dollar to go to South Africa, what is it that you're going to buy that is not in Zimbabwe? You know?
You see, there's a question here, which is a very stupid question, which I just read that point. I've heard a lot of people talk of that point where they say this money can only be used in Zimbabwe. Which other country uses? Does South Africa use the Botswana Pula?
No.
Does Zambia use the South African Rand? So where is this idea that Zimbabwean money is going to be used only in Zimbabwe? Yes, that's the idea.
Yeah, but I think the problem, Simon, is this money, this bond is being introduced as a bond. Why is it not produced? Why is it not being introduced as money, Zimbabwean money? Why is it being a bond?
It's a bond because it's been used. It's a financial instrument.
Yes, but they make it money.
No, they can't make it money. They can't make it money because of the way it was created. It's money, but it's a different kind of money.
I think the government is piggybacking. I think the government is piggybacking on the value of the US dollar, which has worked very well in the country. So they want to keep the value of the US dollar and still maintain that and use it in the country. Because I think if they were to use our own currency, it might just lose value like it happened in 2008.
Yeah, probably if we use our own currency, we can't say the rate is 1:1. But if it's a bond,
we can.
Oh, it's a bond. This is how we acquired it as a financial instrument. Therefore, it's 1:1 because it's a bond.
Yes.
If it was a currency,
I also want to say this.
What has happened in actual fact is we've reset the country to 1980. That's what this government has done. That's what they've just done. They've reset the country. They've just pressed the button and said, okay, let's go back to when the pound was 1:1. They are resetting everything. But government can't tell you such kind of things because if people get to know how money is really created, it will cause a lot of problems in the world. That's why you see this issue of money that is just a piece of paper printed. You will never get it in textbooks. They tell you demand and supply, this and this. They put things in people's heads, and people think like that paper is very, this US dollar is important. No. In America, they are very poor places, extremely poor. That they don't even deserve to have that value of that US currency. But it's the perception which has been created. America is in debt. That money is dead. It's just the Americans go to their Congress and say, we want another $1 trillion. And then Obama signs. That money is sent to the rest of the world to buy real stuff.
Yeah. I think also what is also important to note is that 200 million is a fraction of the monthly transaction that happens in the country. I think there's about over 1 billion of transactions. So 200 million is just a drop in the ocean, and it's almost like change money. So in my view, the bonds are going to be working almost like change, the same way the coins were working. So I believe that's why it's also going to work.
It's going to work because look here, 70% of our population is rural-based. They don't care about US dollar. They don't care. Seriously, if you really think that my Warukumusha is somewhere in drinking Ndari, cares which man is going to buy a beer. You guys are living in another world. It's the Harare people and Blawe people, maybe a few in Mashingo and Tare. That's it. The rest of the population wants to pay school fees. They want to get into a bus and go to Harare and go home.
Well,
we're not a sophisticated economy.
I think that's my point.
That's highly sophisticated. But no.
I think that is my point, Simon, that, people have been gripped with fear of saying the bond is not going to work. The bond is going to take us in 2008 where things didn't work, So it's this unfounded fear that people are afraid, the bond is going to do that, the bond is going to do that. But if you take the bond to Mbuya, who is drinking Dari in Mutare rural areas there, and give you to say, you can go and buy SCAD for £5, what we call 5. Yeah, she can still drink Dari. So what? So what?
Which is why I'm saying that for me, everything is going to be beaten by one thing. The same way that Simon is saying that money around the world is just one giant pyramid scheme, right? Yeah. He is absolutely right. Every country, like the UK right now, is over its head in debt and everything else, but we still think that we still perceive the UK as a very rich country when really it isn't. It's in debt, heavily in debt. Now, it's all about one thing: the power of the mind, perception. And one thing I'm not convinced is that people in Zimbabwe trust that bond note is worth something. Already you can hear people saying this is paper money, monopoly money. They get every term you can think of as before it's come out. Yes. Now I agree with you. That's unhelpful, very unhelpful, because it really is a one-to-one situation. But you know what's going to happen? Because there's already a climate of fear, those unscrupulous people that even the governor himself is expecting to come out are going to come out in full force. And unfortunately, it's going to even include some of his own buddies.
Yeah, so
that's what's going to happen.
My question, Simon, and everyone, instead of making it 1:1, why couldn't we make it stronger? We could have said one bond note is equivalent to $5.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could
Why
have.
not?
Why not? Why
We
not?
could have. We could have.
Well, I
It's
think
perception.
Why not? Why not?
It's
Well, I think
perception.
that
It's not real. It's possible.
I think that would have raised more mistrust than it is now.
It is
That's
right
the only
now.
challenge.
Yeah.
Now, I'm just going to say one more thing.
It's a very important point you raise. It's what is about
Yeah.
perception. Money
Yes.
is perception. It's all in your mind. The real currency is the labor currency. That's the real currency. When people work, I'll talk one day. I think I'm going to write an article about debt. Why debt is important. Why you've got to understand why debt and labor are related. One day I'll write an article and explain these things maybe in the group so that people get to understand the real currency is labor. At the moment in Zimbabwe, we're not able to count our labor. That's why people are afraid the currency is going to lose its value. Our ability not to count. But if we count our economic activity properly, our currency will hold water. It's stronger than what you think. That's what
Right.
it is about.
Right.
Yeah. I think I was also going to say we should not forget about the 5% export incentive. Now, in my view, if that incentive works, it might actually increase production or even act as a stimuli.
It is already a stimuli. They're printing
Right.
money. That 5% is extra money. They are printing money. Yeah,
How-
it's a
how
stimuli.
do you-
They're
how
putting
do
money
you
in the what's any
incentivize
deflation mode?
someone with 5 bond notes when you can incentivize them with $5?
Yeah, but what they've done is they've just put a stimulus in the market. Because what they've done is for every 100 you're getting an extra 5%. So which means like
5%.
yeah, what
Where
they're
is
doing
that-
is if you got
where
a
is
million,
that-
like
where is-
companies like Econet,
Where's
like
the 5%
Econet,
coming from?
But where's the £5 coming from? The $5.
they're just putting figures in. They're
Like a
putting money.
subsidy. It's like a subsidy.
They are
So-
plucking
so-
figures out of
so-
thin air.
So I was saying. So you're saying basically that we're already starting from a minus because people are going to be given money that doesn't exist.
It doesn't.
No,
Money doesn't
where is that money?
exist. Money doesn't
Yes.
exist in real
Yes.
terms.
Yes.
Money doesn't
No.
exist. What government is doing is saying, right, when your labor, you are paying your labor $2 an hour, we are gonna pay an extra 5p for that labor. Government
Exactly.
is stimulating. That's what it's doing. Like they do here.
The government
What they do. When you are working, they give you working tax credit. Where does that money come from? You think it comes from taxes when they're in debt? They're in debt to this country. They're printing money. The government has lent. Oh, this is what we can do.
Which comes back to who's got the power to influence perception. If our RBZ has the power to influence perception, it would work. I'm convinced they don't. Because of the mistrust that was created in 2008.
The mistrust which happened in 2008, but if people didn't stop using the Zimbabwean dollar, do you know that? When I went to Harare myself in 2008, when it was the official US currency, you're still getting into your combi using Zimbabwean dollars. They were giving you a big bundle like that. People still wanted the Zim dollars. People have a perception that the Zimbabwean dollars were not wanted. No, they were in use. People were standing in use, wanting that money.
I think the question is,
Those pairs just were in demand. So
I think the question-
let's be real.
I think the moment that the big supermarkets, the
Take the
big
money.
companies
They're going to
start
take the money.
accepting those bond coins and the bond notes, that's it. We'll
That's it.
forget we ever spoke about these issues.
Yes.
I think the question is, will they be used? Of course, they will be used. So I think in terms of, I don't think that's the question. The question is, will they hold their value?
I think on that,
Let me answer this question. The
I
rotation
think that's
current
good.
was pegged. The rotation current was pegged. 1-to-1 with the US dollar. You peg a currency. Alan, you know that. You can peg a currency and say, we want it to be at this rate.
I'm not doubting that. I'm not doubting that. But look at the situation.
The economy, it causes problems because when you peg your currency, you cause a lot of problems. But Zimbabwean dollar was pegged from 1980 until ASAP.
I agree with you, but look at the Zim in 2008. The Zim dollar was given a value by government, and what happened? There was a black market in Nigeria recently. The naira was allocated a value. The black market thrived. In the end, the government was forced to devalue the naira by almost 100%. I'm just saying, it's not a case of what the pegging is. It's how the public will use them. Because you can put whatever rate you want in there, and say this is the rate we want, but what the public will do might be something else. Like my combi driver was just saying, you know what? Yesterday it was $1, today it's $2. Then what do?
You pay.
Right. The issue is this.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the value will hold. That's my question. I don't think it will. Because of public perception only.
The question is this, like I keep telling you, if government is going to be strict on this and do its law as government and not start printing money and going to buy money from the black market, then these things will work. Because government, like right now, it has squeezed all the US dollars out of the market. It's capable of doing those kind of things. They've got the tools and instruments to do that. And the government has got powers to say, you're not going to charge this money. They've got the powers. They can do it. They can basically tell people, you charge this money, we're closing you down. And they will. But because we've got greedy people who also want to take advantage of these arbitrage opportunities. I call it arbitrage because they create them and then they say, oh, okay, there's an opportunity here for me to make money. The same people who should be stopping these illegal activities.
Okay,
that's
guys,
where
I'm giving you 1 minute each to say any closing statements. Who wants to start? Thomas.
Well, I think that the bond is going to work. Like Maita has said that once it starts being flooding the supermarkets, flooding the institutions, it's going to work. People now are afraid because they have not seen it working. But once it rolls and people start seeing it working, they'll say, but this is working. The black market people will always obviously try to take advantage of the ignorance of the people. You know, people will think that, the bond notice, it does not have value. And people will say, okay, I can pay you 15 bond notes for $10. And of course, people will make money like that, you know.
Okay. Maita?
Yeah, no, I personally think that the bond note is going to work, I think, because number one, as long as the government is disciplined enough to print just enough for what they've actually agreed, I think that's number one. The other point is that I believe that the amount of the bond being put into the economy is not too big enough to cause big issues, and I think it will be mainly used for small transactions. And that's it.
Alan?
I think that it's a very good idea. I think in principle it's supposed to work. However, I think that the value won't hold because there's already a thriving black market on US dollars. And I think they'll just continue on to bond notes and they will devalue note in very short periods of time because of perception. Not because it's not a good idea, but because of perception. And also the other thing is the fundamentals of Zimbabwe right now are not particularly brilliant in terms of local production. If we had more local production, then maybe. But with us still relying on imports, that's an issue as well that might affect the whole thing. So for me, it's perception. That's what will hamper it.
Okay, Simon, I know that you've already said a lot about why you think it's going to work. But instead of printing 200 million, why not print 200 billion?
No, I think for me, one thing which we're forgetting in this whole scenario, we over-focus on the paper funds, on the currency. I think the mistake the government has done, not wanting to disclose from the bond, is the government is failing to focus on its domestic market, on its domestic economy. They need to focus on the housing market so that they can create demand, so that they can stimulate activity in the economy. For me, this is where they're getting it wrong. They're focusing on the paper. That paper, we've tried US dollars, we've tried the Zim dollars, we've tried the rands. It has not worked because we rejected the rand, whatever, but it's still working anyway. But the fundamentals are, get your domestic market running, get your housing market running. That's key because it will stimulate demand for goods and services. And then, this is exactly what we are talking about. When a country is building infrastructure, it attracts skilled people. It attracts these quality people. These people are the ones who get the economy to grow. And I think that's where we are making a mistake. We so much focus on the export. Why do I need to export when myself I'm hungry? This was designed by the Western economies so that we export to them good quality stuff at the expense of yourselves. They tell you to export. Why do I need to export when my children are dying hungry? You should always ask that question. If you read the history, prehistory, these people didn't export anything, but the economies grew. What made them become superpowers? So our government must focus on the domestic market. If it was me, I would have taken 200 million and taken 100 million and said, I'm building a housing bond. That housing bond would have been split and created $1 billion by putting it into the housing market. Sell mortgages to diaspora people. Each diaspora people paying 200 every month for a mortgage. How many? 1 million of them doing that. How much money is going to come into the economy? This is a simple stuff. You don't need a genius to think stuff like that. For me, that's what they need to be doing.
Thank you, gentlemen. I think we're gonna have another talk maybe 2 weeks after the introduction of the bond notes, just to see how your predictions are going. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good night.